Hello, my friends, and welcome to another great episode of the Long Ash Podcast. Nick Libretti here from Cigars. And today is yet again going to be one of the greatest days of our lives because we are joined by none other than the great Terence Reilly of Aganorsa, one of our favorite guests. Terence, thanks so much for joining us yet again.
The greatest day of our lives.
The greatest. I mean, now that I've had like 6 greatest days of my life this year.
Hey, we're looking ahead. We're not looking in the past.
Man, next year we need to top it. We need to have 10 great days
At
next
least.
year. At least.
Maybe more.
Yeah. How's it going, man? How's you've been traveling a lot?
Yeah, just running around like an idiot, but you can't complain. You know, we were preaching the gospel of Aganorsa. We had great partners out there like you guys, and so it's a lot of fun. But you know, the Cowboys are getting old. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. So
I'm
trying to be smarter about
it. When you kind of change your position around a little bit, I was like, oh man, good. Terence gets to like spend more time at home, and then every time I'm on Facebook, he's in the Sahara Desert. He's in he's in China. He's in Pennsylvania.
It's a little less like chaotic than it was. Like it's a little bit more thought out and thoughtful travel and everything like that. So it's still a lot, but it's Fabian Ziegler came on board about a little over a year ago, and so he's been a huge help with a lot of what he's doing. Yeah, and that's made it like I wouldn't say less work, but less chaotic work.
I mean, I look at guys like you, and I thank God that I'm on the retail side because listen, a lot of guys I know would love that part of the business. I'm such a homebody. If I have to travel once a year for work, they're like, "Oh, we're going to send you to the trade show. It's going to be like a whole big thing. There's going to be dinners." I'm like, I really got to go.
Well, there's the advantage of that. I get to go where I want to go, whereas you have to accept whoever comes in the door. Exactly. So that's a little different.
Exactly.
The actual being places is great. It's the whole. If you could do me a favor and maybe create a time machine, like the flux capacitor or something, or some sort of transportation device that like zaps you from one place to another.
What if we just buy enough Aganorsa this year to get you a private plane?
Perfect. Okay. I'll take it.
Okay.
I really would prefer the teleportation device, but I'll take a plane. I'll take a private jet.
Well, it's fun. Did you see that new the proposed tunnel that they want to build from New York to London?
Really?
Yeah. It would be like the Channel. It's like a serious proposal. It would be like the Channel. It would be something like $20 trillion to build it, but you would go from New York to London on a high-speed rail in 54 minutes.
54 minutes? That's not real.
It is.
No.
The high-speed rail that they have in Japan, it could probably. I mean, what is it? It's 3,000 miles.
That's like from here. It's like a 6-hour flight.
Yeah.
And it's gonna do a 6-hour flight worth of travel and that quick on a train.
I'm just telling you what Instagram told me.
I'm calling. I want to see that.
No, I'll send you. There's been I've seen it on several different things over the past week. Would you do? I wouldn't go on that thing.
I won't be the first one. That's for sure.
My thoughts exactly. I'm like, dude, if I was around when the Lincoln Tunnel was built, I'm gonna be like, I'll do it in like 5 years.
Look at the big dig in Boston. The thing's falling apart.
Yeah. I'm gonna do it. Give me a couple of years to make sure everything gets settled in there before I go traveling under 3,000 miles of the ocean.
Include me out.
Well, the Channel worked out, but that's I think that's like a 10-minute trip.
One, I've never been on the Channel. And two, I'm still not. I don't like that. I don't even like I don't like being underground like that. And then I was on a subway once, or the thing stopped. I think it was when I was on the tube in England, and it just stopped all of a sudden. And it was kind of like,
now what?
Yeah. And you're sitting there with a packed car, like a human lasagna.
There was that movie with Sylvester Stallone. I think it was called Daylight, when the Lincoln Tunnel there was an accident on one end and it collapsed and people were trapped in the middle. He had to go into it was terrifying.
Yeah, that's not my thing.
All right, so any events in England, you're strictly on a plane.
I'm on a plane. That private jet you guys are getting.
Okay. All right. We'll make sure to put that in next year's budget. So today we are smoking. I know it's been out now for the better part of a year, but one of your big highlights from this year from Aganorsa was the Arsenio.
Yes, sir.
I know we've talked about it before, but now that we actually have it here, why don't you go into a little bit of a backstory about who Arsenio was, what makes this blend so special, how integral he was to the company?
Yeah, so Eduardo Fernandez, the owner of the company, he's Cuban, which is very common. His family donated all their stuff to Castro very generously. Like a lot of people, he grew up in South Florida. That part, he's got a lot of commonality with other manufacturers, but his family was not involved in tobacco or agriculture or anything like that. So when he got into growing tobacco, he didn't have any personal experience. And so he went to Cuba in the late 90s, and he brought back a team of Cuban agronomists who had worked for Cuba Tobacco for, in some cases, half a century, and brought them to Nicaragua. And the most important of that group was this guy named Arsenio Ramos. And Arsenio Ramos, he was head of leaf processing in Pinar del Rio, Cuba, which is the best growing region of Cuba.
The most famous tobacco region, probably.
Yeah, that's why Cuban cigars are what they are. It's because of Pinar del Rio. And he was kind of retired because he was not a party member. And if you're not a party member, they kind of push you out at a certain point because they want loyal guys, regardless of qualification, at the highest levels. And so the reason he couldn't be a party member was that when you try to join, there's a big questionnaire you have to fill out. And one of the questions is, do you believe in God? And in a communist country, the correct answer is no. And so he would say yes. And they'd say, come back, thanks a lot. And so he couldn't join. And so he was kind of retired and not doing anything in his early 60s. Eduardo convinced him to come to Nicaragua along with several others, and they started growing tobacco. And Arsenio was really responsible for developing the signature flavor Aganorsa is known for. And he spent the last 20 years of his life working for us. He passed away in 2018. And a cigar that he really loved to smoke is this blend, in this size actually. And it didn't have bands on it or anything like that. It just was a cigar. And so we were trying to come up with something to honor him, and we were trying different things. And then we found out, why don't we just use the cigar he liked to smoke?
Exactly. His private cigar.
Simple, keep it simple. And so we obviously dressed it up. His face is on the band. If you notice, he's the O in Arsenio is a smoke ring.
I always like that.
And so this is in tribute to him, and this debuted this year, and something really, really proud of. He's an incredible guy, just from a very humble stock, but was like a poet, was a writer, was like this Renaissance guy that was just an incredible person, and we wouldn't be where we are without him.
No, and like this has received a lot of accolades this year. I'm curious as to what draws. So, obviously, the kind of diaspora of Cuban manufacturers after the revolution, a lot of them settled in Honduras, Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica. But I find that a lot of them went to Nicaragua. Like maybe the biggest ones at first went to the DR. That's where General is, Altadis, Davidoff. But a lot of them settled in Nicaragua. And a lot of them kind of modern day, like the Pepin Garcias, for example, who like kind of came out much later. They were all drawn to Nicaragua. What is it about Nicaragua that makes it such like this bastion for these Cuban expats when they're trying to grow their tobacco?
It has the ability to produce entire cigars, number one. So you can make a cigar 100% out of Nicaraguan tobacco, wrapper, binder,
which
filler.
Which is what they do in Cuba. So
which is what they do in Cuba.
They're used to doing it all in like one area.
Yeah, so you can have an entire cigar made there, so that's an advantage. Certainly Jalapa is very similar to Pinar del Rio in Cuba. When Eduardo took all those Cuban guys up to Jalapa, they were like, oh my God, this looks like Pinar del Rio. So in terms of similarities, there was a lot of similarities. It also just by itself has great soil. In the early days, the dictator Somoza, he was trying to promote industry in Nicaragua, and so he was kind of welcoming to a lot of these guys to get them to start growing and operating. We actually have a farm that Somoza used to own.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's called La Mia. Yeah, it's mine.
Right.
It's like dictators. They like.
And that was before the Sandinistas.
Yeah, that was back. It's our the farms we grow on are almost all farms that were grown on for a long time.
Okay.
And usually that's a good thing because it's not only the soil. There's a lot of factors. One, you need the soil, obviously, but there's too much wind. They'll blow sand up into the leaves.
Right.
You get sand.
There's a reliability that you kind of know what you're getting.
Exactly.
This has been growing for 50 years. We know.
Yeah, you know what's going to happen. Yeah, there's places like Leon have great soil, but it's loose, and so the tobacco plant falls over. So you have that. So Nicaragua has a great environment to grow tobacco, and you've just really seen that once some all Latin American countries, the political situations are always a little interesting.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I started in the business, Nicaragua was the third or fourth biggest cigar producer, and now it's the number one, and that's in a 15-year period. So you really seen over the last 15 years or so, just tremendous growth with Nicaraguan tobacco.
Yeah, I mean, when I started, I guess we started around the same time because I started in 2010, working in the store. But yeah, it was Dominican by a mile at that time because it was all like I said, General, Altadis, Davidoff, Fuente, these guys who are still the big titans. But then Honduras, which I feel like had kind of like, like went back a little bit, and now it's kind of having a little bit of a resurgence. But at the time, Honduras was still big, all because the other half of the General stuff was there, all the Villazon stuff was coming out of there. Alec Bradley and Rocky at the time was using like the Placencia factories based out of there. Yeah, but Nicaragua, I'm trying to think, in 2010.
Oh, you have Padron, you have Hoya de Nicaragua, of course.
Yeah.
There just wasn't that many.
No. There was ones that existed at that time, but like we weren't selling them. You got to remember, when I started at JR in 2010, there was no boutiques. There was like
It was
Quesada was probably the most boutique thing that we had.
Sure, yeah.
So, and Nicaragua's at that time, besides Padron, which we also didn't have, and besides Hoya de Nicaragua, they were kind of this, I guess Perdomo. We had Perdomo.
Perdomo was around. Yeah.
Oliva, but other than that, we did not have. There was no My Father. We didn't have Tatuaje.
And for instance, Oliva, Perdomo are massively larger than they were back then.
Exactly. There was times that almost all of these guys were considered like in this boutique kind of genre, who have now become titans, and there's still guys who still classify themselves as boutique, but in terms of like their influence, sure. I would put Aganorsa as one of them. Like in terms of the product and the style that you guys make, I would classify it in more boutique than kind of gen pop.
Yeah. Sure,
but
I would agree.
The influence you have, like the tobaccos that you guys sell, having I think almost 100% vertically integrated at this point, right? So you guys are like a massive player, but I like how you still treat your products. Because a boutique is not supposed to be bougie. That's not why we call something that. We call it because it has an artisanal quality about it.
Absolutely, I think that's the right word.
More patient. It's like we're going to get this right.
It's not treated like a widget.
Yeah, and listen, we hope everyone likes it, but we're not making this for everyone. We're making this cigar for these people it's going to be their favorite. And for these people, this one's going to be their favorite. We don't want something that's just like, everyone kind of likes this and everyone will kind of buy it sometimes. Sure. It's like, listen, only maybe 1 out of 10 people are going to love the Arsenio, but they're going to love the Arsenio more than anything else. And I think having that kind of passion about making the product translates to the customer, which is why I think Aganorsa has such a dedicated fan base. Yeah. With the acolytes. I can't go 2 days on Facebook without getting acolyte mentions or
we need you to act more active. I need you in there more.
I do. I have been so bad on social media recently.
I can't do it alone, Nick. I need your help.
Listen, I'm here for you, man. I mean, I feel bad now that I'm leaving you on Facebook. I gave you a new buyer today, too.
Yeah. Man, you're moving up in the world. You're forgetting, about the little guys like me.
I will never forget about. What was your name again?
Who are you?
So, but let's talk. So we've had some great projects this year. 2, in fact, the Crafted by JR, which we're loving. Awesome. Yeah, and we're really we're growing that core line out with other manufacturers, and then like reordering from like you and Crown Heads, like to make that kind of the new, not the new version of alternative, because alternatives are a different category. But for so many years, the JR alternative was seen as like the in-house brand of JR, and it still is in terms of money made. But times have changed, quality and like what people are looking for in terms of price point and blend and style. So my goal is to turn the Crafted by JR line. Like I want people to think of this when they think of JR, and you're one of the pioneers on that line. So I'm very happy with that project. And then we just released a few months ago the newest addition to another big in-house line for us, Bone Shaker, and I believe it was Jim's idea. I'm gonna give him credit anyway because he's my boss, so it'll help my
Smart.
boss. Yeah.
You're not advancing, for no reason.
But he's like, hey, Bone Shaker, it's like these, higher octane, stronger cigars, Nicaraguan, in these bigger ring gauges. And he's like, who does that better than anyone else? He's like, Aganorsa with the Lunatic and the JFR line. So we just released the Bone Shaker Lunatic.
Delicious.
Dude, when I was putting in the order, and I have to admit, big ring gauges are a blind spot for me. So I'm putting in the order, and I'm like, all right, well, we're going to get a bunch of 6x54s, because I'm like, even though that's still big for me, I'm like, but it's a medium size for these guys. I'm like, and then I'll get the same amount of 6x60s. I'm like, I'll order a couple of boxes of 7x70, like the littlest amount that Terence will let me order for production. those things are just the 7x70s are just moving.
When I joined Aganorsa, I was like, why do we make all these gigantic 80, 770? What's up with this? And then I saw the sales, and I was like, oh, it's
make more, make them bigger.
Yeah. It's just been incredible to see how popular that is, and the people that like them, that's what they smoke. So that 770 smoker, that's what he smokes. He doesn't smoke Toros. He doesn't smoke Robustos.
He's not like, oh, this is once in a while I'm gonna have this 7x70, but tomorrow I'm gonna have a Corona. It's like, no, I want. Yeah. It's, truck drivers, guys on long hauls, fishermen. Like, I can just light this up. It's great tasting. It's at a great price, and it's going to last me, 6 hours. And they're also very reasonably priced too. It's not like you would think because it's bigger. Oh, it's using more tobacco. Yes, but how you guys have made it kind of this value proposition, but it still maintains that Aganorsa quality is remarkable.
And again, I'm not a big ring age guy, so I don't want to mislead anything here. But like, because we blend to the size, there are some that I prefer in the larger ring gauge. Our Lunatic El Chiquito, I think, is the Habano. I think is the most flavorful of the bunch. It's not my favorite size, but it's flavor-wise, I think it's the best one. And I think the reason for that is that originally when big ring gauge came out, they kind of got a bad rap because I think the manufacturers are basically these crazy gringos don't know what they're doing. They just jammed it with tobacco that was what available. Right. Didn't really blend for it. And so they're like, oh, these don't have any flavor. But if you blend to the size, big grain gauge burns cooler. You're able to have a greater variety of tobaccos in them. So if you blend to the size, you can create something that's really, really flavorful. Just a little bit, once you get over 56 or something, that's a little bit big for me. But flavor wise, it's outstanding.
So I agree with you, and I'm on that same boat. I'm not the biggest big ring gauge smoker. But there have been some cigars out there where my, by far, favorite of the line was a 6x60 or even sometimes even a little bit bigger. Because sometimes especially if you're not trying to blend to size like that, like if you're just like, oh, we're just going to increase the ratio, but just by increasing the ratio doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work. You have to actually, you have to redo the math. It's a different equation.
Yeah.
So it's not just like, oh, times it by 2 and then we have our bigger ring gauge. But there are times where, in a smaller or even, a 6x50, it's like the wrapper's too strong. It's like, it's tasty, but it's overpowering. And then I would smoke like a 6x60. I'm like, man, if it tasted like this in the Toro, other sizes, this would be remarkable. Yeah. And there's even guys I've talked to John about some projects he's released over at Crown Heads where he did a certain wrapper on a thinner ring gauge. He's like, dude, if I made this a 6x60, it would have been the best cigar. It just sometimes it very much works to the benefit of the blend.
It's funny because you're starting to see when I first started, everyone blended in Coronas and then they went from there. And now most people use Toros just because even not a 60 plus isn't for everybody, but when I first started, I remember Diamond Crown came out with a 54 or something. Everyone was like, "Oh, this is huge," you know. And now, a 54 is that's a Toro, you know. And so, the overall ring gauge has increased, and you see that they're using a size that's a little bit closer to what the average ring gauge would be.
You're seeing a lot of that in Cuban. I mean, not that I smoke any Cuban cigars anymore with those prices, but every time I see, Half Wheel or aficionado articles and I'm kind of seeing new release, whatever, Por La Yaga or whatever, they're doing a lot of 54s. Yeah. And 6x54, 6.5x54. Even Cuba, which is notorious for this kind of size, a Corona, maybe a 6x48 or something like that, have been utilizing bigger ring gauges to, I think they're probably some of their most popular ones now. Because again, like you said, if you're blending it to the size, so you combine all right, I'm getting the same experience with this 6x60 as I am with the 6x50. And you combine that with kind of the value-based mindset of a lot of consumers where I'm like, oh, it's only 10 cents more or 20 cents more, but I'm going to get another half hour out of this cigar. You can have something that's true, really successful, which is I think what you get when you look at the JFR Lunatics, is you get this kind of crossroads of it actually is a good experience. It's not just shove a bunch of tobacco in a big ring gauge, but you're also getting them oh, well, at this size, I'm still saving money and it's a great experience, which is really unique.
The Lunatic Habano was rated both best value of the year and it was a top 10 cigar of the year and an aficionado. So it's got accolades too.
Very rarely those two lists intersect.
Yeah. So it was a good year. And again, that's nice. You get the quality with not necessarily having to break the bank.
No, I agree. So coming up, we got the new year coming up. TPE and then PCA.
You going to TPE?
We're not going to TPE. At least I'm not. I think I'm going to PCA for the first time in
wow. Yeah, but why?
5 years. 2019 was my last one.
Yeah.
Well, you know, there was some stuff.
It's a long
happening.
story.
Yeah, there was some stuff going on for a
yeah.
little bit. But no, yeah. So I think, and I'm glad it's back in New Orleans.
Yeah, me too.
That was the amount of people. So I think just from this company, I think me, Andy, who's our lead merchandiser, he's downstairs, and Jim, the 2015 New Orleans show, and we were all at 3 different companies. Was all of our first trade show.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Do you remember what your first one was?
It was New Orleans, but it was in 09 or 8. It was in New Orleans 2 years in a row, in like 8 and 9 or 9 and 10.
And then it was like in Orlando randomly one
year.
There
was 2012 was Orlando. There was one was in Orlando. 11 was Vegas. So, but the thing with New Orleans that is when you're from Miami and you go to a place and you say it's too humid. There's something wrong with that.
Yeah.
And so July, August in New Orleans is horrible. But this is going to be April, so it's going to be a nice time of year. It's going to be nice weather.
Yeah.
Food's great there. And you're going to get a lot of, it hasn't been there in 10 years. So it's going to get a lot of people that, are going to come drive in that aren't going to drive to Vegas. And so.
Yeah, Vegas is like, it's so desolate. But honestly, my brother lives in Houston. I've done the drive from here to Houston and back with him a few times. Like the amount of people who are kind of like, especially like those southern stores that are within driving distance of New Orleans.
Yeah, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Northern Florida.
Except for Dion and, and people from like close in California, who's driving to the Vegas show. Like everyone's got to fly in. So I think you're going to get a good amount of like an increase just by people, being able to get
drive in instead of fly.
Exactly. And the April thing. And it's also, I'm pretty sure that's, because Ash Wednesday is in like February. So it's like post all the
after
New Orleans
Easter,
nonsense. I've only been, that was my only time there. And it was in the middle of July. I was about 80 pounds heavier. I was dying.
It was the worst. You'd be sweating and you walk into the convention center and it would be ice cold and it'd be cold because you'd been, it was horrible.
It was really rough. So I'm excited for, this year. Well, for a lot of reasons. Again, like I said, New Orleans, but not having gone, I've read about how the show has changed the past few years, the ups and downs and the new things they're trying, but I haven't seen it. And I want to see, and this is kind of my question to you, what is the evolution of the trade show? Does it need to evolve? Like, what changes have we seen in the past couple of years, and what changes do you think we still need to see? Not necessarily the organization, but do you feel that the show, as it's been for the past 30 or 40 years, is like it's fine the way it is?
Well, first of all, let me preface what I'll say with that. I give them a lot of credit. It's a very small team. This is not, and it's a small trade show. I mean, it's not like you do a tech trade show or something, and there's hundreds of thousands of people potentially. Yeah. So they have a lot of. Then you throw smoking in, and then it's another disaster. So they have a lot of challenges, and I think they do a great job. And then again, everybody has their opinion of how it should be better, and so they're trying to make as many people happy as possible. Their job's not easy. I don't envy them for having to do it. I definitely think that they're making change. I think one of the most important things that's happened over the first years is kind of the realization it couldn't stay what it was exactly. It just times have changed. I think the key aspect of it is that even 15 years ago, but certainly before that, if you wanted to know what was going on in this business, you had to be there. Right. You wanted to keep your relationships with the manufacturers. That's where you saw them. They weren't going around everywhere, and like there was no FaceTime. There was email, but that's it was still different. And there was no Zoom. There was no YouTube, or at least nobody was using it if it was around. Now you have all these ways to stay in touch with people, to get information, to know what's going on. That you didn't really have back then. So that part of it is not important anymore. So why are people going to take time out of their day to go fly for a week, and you have to schedule extra staff or whatever, flights, hotels, meals, everything else? What are they going to do that for? And so you have to have reasons that previously you didn't have. To do that, and I don't think that's an easy question to answer. Right. I think what's that magic combination? Is it entertainment? Is it deals? Is it other benefits? What are those benefits? Is it including types of groups that you didn't include previously? I don't have those answers.
Yeah.
But I think the key thing is that they're looking at it from the perspective that the world's changing. We've got to do things so that remains an important part of this industry. And again, it is an important part of the industry. I still, I'm old enough where I enjoy that aspect of it and seeing everybody and being in person and sitting down, having a cigar with them. And I think that's special about cigars, is that ability to do that. And so I think, and plus on the lobbying side, the trade shows funds a lot of all that stuff.
Right.
So I think that it's important that it continues. It's just the question mark is what's going to be the most optimal way for it to thrive in the future.
So I agree with everything you said, particularly on the fact that like whatever shape it needs to take to survive, like I'm on board, because I feel like even if it kind of transitioned from like this is where you get all your information to then like, all right, you can get some information from home, but like this is where you're gonna get all your deals. You're gonna put in like a year-long order and you can do all these things. Now people are you can kind of do that throughout the year. So I realize that the overall purpose has changed, but I do think that the trade show is important to get everyone together in one place. It's great for you guys to be able to interact with the consumers. Obviously, companies like you interact with the consumers on a daily basis. You're always doing events and everything. But companies that maybe don't have that big of a team get to do that. For the trade purposes, for like, I found a new box manufacturer or new bat. Like, it's important for that stuff too. I would like to see it become more along the lines of like the New York City car show. Like, don't send out a press release of what you're releasing and then be like, we're going to unveil it at the show. I think one of the biggest things that happened at the trade show in the past couple of years was like the Fuente, Padron, like the unveil.
Yeah.
Everyone should do that. Like, if you have something that you're planning on releasing, now listen, timelines and manufacturing and vendors and all this stuff, sometimes they don't add up and you can't get your thing in time. But in my idea, if you have something to unveil it don't tell anybody about it except for your team. Don't send out emails except to me, of course, so you can give me a little heads up. But unveil it at the show. Pull a curtain back. Here's the new thing. Because now people are very excited to go. I mean, like if they know, like, I'm still excited to go, but like, all right, I know what they're releasing. I know how many boxes I'm going to order. Giving people a reason to actually like come and be excited, not just to like have to go, it's a cool business trip, but giving them a real reason to latch onto it.
I think you hit the nail. Excitement. You want to be like, I can't wait to go. Yeah. That's what, when you have that is when you found a winning formula. I can't wait to go. I can't wait to be there. I can't wait to see what's going to happen. That is really what you need to happen, because otherwise, if you're just going to rely on it being like a purely logical numbers thing,
right?
It's not really gonna work.
I agree. You're going to TPE also?
I will be out there, yes.
So how's that? Because that's a fairly interesting, because you're getting some of a similar crowd that you would get at PCA, but also kind of opening up to like this other kind of demographic of people who are cigar adjacent, I would say, vape, custom, like people who own vape shops and these other kind of smoke shops and everything.
It's like I'll be the only one. I mean, we'll have some reps there, but I'll be the only one from the head company out there. It's not a high cost for us to go.
Okay.
And you do get a certain access to people that you don't get access to otherwise. Mm-hmm. So we still see it as a value to go. We work with Phillips and King, and so it's their show, and so they're a partner of ours. So there's still a reason to go, and I think that you see it at the PCA now. That the whole kinds of kiosk concept with the booths and everything like that, like keeping it kind of affordable for a lot of companies to go out there. So, I think that there's some value there. Certainly, I think it'll be better this year than it was last year. It was too close to the PCA. People, for the vast majority of retailers, if they're choosing one, they're going to go to PCA.
Right.
So that kind of hurt it a little bit last year. But this year, there's more time between the two. And then PCA is in New Orleans, and this is in Vegas. So there are some people that won't go to it if it's not in Vegas.
Yeah, they like the Vegas. I get to go to Vegas. I get to go to the steakhouse.
Yeah, and if you're in California or in LA, it's a quick trip and it's easy. So again, it just depends on these. Our thing is that it's not for us to determine.
Right.
We go where the market leads us.
Exactly.
And so PCA I think is crucial, and TPA provides some opportunities as well. So.
Yeah. No, I think next year I'm going to try to advocate just for me to go just to check it out. Just to also see, from a creative standpoint, I'm like, I obviously know what just about everyone in the cigar industry is doing, but what are these other companies doing to attract customers? How are they releasing products? What are they doing?
Yeah, for sure.
What are their marketing plans? Like just to kind of get a little insight from, a little outside insight. Outside insight. I'm going to copyright that.
No, there you go.
So speaking of these trade shows, are you guys planning on anything big coming out in the next few months?
Well, JFR's 20th anniversary is next year, so we have some stuff planned for that. And again, there'll be the 5th year we've been doing Supreme Leaf, so there's some stuff
Love
for
the
that.
Supreme Leaf.
So we always try to have the trade show a reason to come to the booth, to make sure that you get your hands on, whether it's limited or just new, that you get first access to it. So we always try to have some goodies there for you.
What's going on with one of my favorite lines from you guys, which is the Rare Leaf? Well, actually, there's 2 lines. It's the Rare Leaf, and then the I don't know why I'm blanking on it. Sorry, it's been a long day. The Cerberus, the
Garden Farm.
Yeah, 2 of my favorite lines. 2 kind of different objectives with each one.
Sure, yeah.
You don't get a new one every year, but every couple of years. So, Rare Leaf came out last year. The Rare Leaf Maduro.
Yep.
So I'm guessing maybe next year we'll see something.
Yeah, we'll see. Like I
or
would
are you
say,
trying to keep that like just to the
yeah.
2?
I think one of the things that's and it's not easy, but the easiest part of a new cigar is the launch.
Yes.
And that's not easy either.
Yeah.
I don't want to trivialize that. What you really need to do is get it into people's hands. And there's a contingent of people that anything new they'll try.
Right.
But those people also tend to want to try the next thing. So you get a hit off them, but then they're okay. What next do you have coming out?
Building it out. Is the really important part.
Getting to the customers that are less engaged in terms of staying on top of what's new, or that's not necessarily something that they actively try to do. That takes more time. That takes doing events. That takes doing a lot of campaigning. That takes a lot of ads. That takes a lot of talking about it on podcasts. And so we don't want to be, a third of the way into that process, and then here's the next new thing. Right. Now we always release new things. There's things that we feel that we can add to the market without disrupting those processes, but we've tried to be smart about when we come out with a new line that's going to be a permanent regular rotation.
Right. No, and I like that. I like how it's it's like, all right, so this year we'll do a Gardening of the Farm, then maybe a year and a half later there's a Rare Leaf, and then a year and a half later something new for JFR.
Sure.
So it's like by the time you come around to wanting to do a new rendition of Gardening of the Farm, they've had that last one for 2 or 3 years. It's as built as it's going to be, and so it's time to help kind of build on top.
Yeah, it's stable. It's penetrated deep enough into the market to hold place.
Well, I like that you guys are almost you're vertically integrated in your portfolio as well, and you have from the Validation series and JFR up to Rare Leaf, you kind of have something for every single different price point and different profile, but not just like, I just want to, wherever somebody is, I just want to keep them there. You want someone who smokes Validation to try a Rare Leaf.
Yeah.
And you want the guy who smokes a Rare Leaf, like, try a Validation. This can be your more everyday thing. So you can kind of keep people within your own cycle, which I find really smart.
And again, people, sometimes guys start off. I hear people, I just used to smoke big ring gauge, and then I started getting into groups, and I really got into cigars, and a lot of guys told me about Coronas and Lonsdales, and then we got Guardian of the Farm, or we got this, or and so it's good to have the ability to move the person as they evolve on their cigar journey from one part of your portfolio to another, where they're still engaged and they still enjoy the product, and you're able to capture what they're interested in as they change.
No, I like that a lot. Terence, you know this. I'm a big fan of I mean, obviously the tobacco you guys have, and all its renditions and stuff you guys do for yourselves to what you do for us and other companies, but also how you operate as a company. I feel like if I was to start a cigar company, I would run it like Aganorsa, keeping the blend and the tobacco on the forefront, but I like the overall operation. I like the vertical integration. I have most of my own tobacco. I got to buy occasionally some stuff, if I want to throw a San Andreas wrapper, but otherwise I can kind of work with what I got. And I like you have a large portfolio, but it doesn't feel too large. It doesn't feel overwhelming.
I
You're not hitting the same point like, oh, I know what it's going to be like because they have 5 of these. It's like everything is different.
I always kind of use the analogy we're kind of like, say, a bourbon bar. Like there's all different types of bourbon. There's weeded bourbon and cask strength and this and that and also, but if I have a bottle of bourbon that you haven't had before and you like bourbon, you know what you're getting into. It's not going to taste like gin.
Right.
It's a familiar experience to a certain degree.
Right.
But with its own unique characteristics and aspects, so that you're able to have a lot of different experiences, but always have the comfort of knowing what you're getting involved in. And,
Exactly.
and the pros and cons to that, I mean, the pro is just what I said. It's like, oh, it's Aganorsa. Okay, I know what I'm getting into with that. So it makes it easier to try something else from us that you haven't had before. On the downside, we don't have a cigar for everybody. We're not for everybody. We make a signature flavor, and people that like that, that's, their cigar, their favorite cigar. They can't find that taste elsewhere. If they're not there in their journey yet, we don't have anything for them.
Right.
So that's the pros and cons of it. But we found that to be successful because we want people that smoke Aganorsa tend to love it.
Right.
I always say it's okay is death. It's better they hate it. At least they'll remember it. Oh yeah, it's okay. That's no good. So if you have a whole bunch of stuff, something for everybody, but they're not in love really with, that's not as good as having a more narrow range,
right?
But having people that enjoy that really be passionate about it.
Yeah, I mean that is like the death knell to a brand. And as I've gotten like older and more, I guess, persnickety, there's no like it's fine for me anymore. It's either like, hey, I really like this, or even if I think it is fine, I'm not. There's too much good stuff. The competition out there is too tough. If somebody released something that's just like, yeah, this is okay, I'm never going to smoke it because there's no reason to.
Yeah.
Because I can go over to Aganorsa and like have 15 amazing things that are all going to scratch a different itch at a different price point, a different profile, a different combination of tobaccos. I'm not going to settle for it's fine.
Yeah, the only metric of success is passion for the product. And, just like you said, oh, what'd you think of that? Yeah, it was okay. That's not something you're going to try. No. Oh, man, it's awesome. You got to try one. That's a totally different... Yeah, which one is that again? So it's just the tonality, the enthusiasm, that really changes the pathway for a brand.
Well, I gotta say, you spoke on like that Aganorsa signature flavor, and I'm not good with words. I don't know how to put that flavor into words, but it's something that me and you have talked about going back a couple years as we've been doing the show, and it's something. But before I knew more about the industry, before I knew a lot of like who's making what and where things are made. I remember even in my time in the store when I first started getting into boutiques, and I was smoking a lot of Illusione that were being made, by you guys at the time. I know he also got some made in Honduras, but I found this signature flavor in a lot of these cigars that I'm like, oh yeah, it's like Illusione-esque. That's how I would describe it. I come to find out all these years later that it's really Aganorsa-esque because it was all the cigars he was making utilizing your guys' tobacco, I found had this flavor.
And again, I think it works both ways. Is that like he's got an amazing palate, and he's been able to take our tobacco and do incredible things with it. And sometimes somebody will say, oh, that's Aganorsa. Well, I'll try an Illusione. Or some people came up to us because they're like, oh, the cigar is made with that tobacco. Well, let me try that. And so rising tide raises all ships. And I use as a testament to our quality is some of the partners we have, Dion and Viaje, Andre over at Viaje, and these guys that could work with anybody and choose us.
Well, it's cool because again, you guys are. It's just so interesting now that I think about it.
Kyle from Worked as well.
Yeah, you guys are so cyclical in nature, not even in your own portfolio, but then you obviously make your own cigars. You make cigars for retailers like us. You have guys who come to your factory to make their cigars, and then you just also sell a lot of your tobacco to other factories. You're literally involved in every act, except maybe making your own cellophane.
Yeah. That's next.
Which I'm sure. I mean, you guys like because the Aganorsa, like the conglomerate, it's involved in a lot of different areas of like farming and agriculture.
Yeah, there's cattle farms, there's slaughterhouses, there's pig farms, there's. I don't know if they still have rice farms, but I know they were doing other, rice and beans and things like that.
So if we take a trip down to Nicaragua and go visit the Aganorsa factory, I can expect a nice steak.
You can a nice steak, a nice pig, a nice pig roast. We can do that. Get a nice Aganorsa pig.
Listen, this year they want me to travel more. Nicaragua I haven't been to since probably like 2016.
Come on down.
So I mean,
we've been waiting for you.
Well, there's some stuff happened there for a little bit. Again, the past couple of years have been wild for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But no, I would very much.
It's never boring.
I think our Chris has never gotten to go down to Nicaragua or see any of the factories yet. So to get to go shoot some footage in Nicaragua, and also, I always got to pitch everything as like a value to the bosses. So I'm like, listen, in Nicaragua, in an hour, there's 15 different places. We spend 5 days
throw a rock
there.
and you can
exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
literally, it's us, and the next to us is I think Perdomo, and the next to Perdomo is Oliva, and then like around the corner is Plasencia. And then
I've driven by your facility because my first ever trip to Nicaragua was I did like the Perdomo tour.
Oh yeah.
In like maybe 2000.
Yeah, we're right next door to him. Yeah.
So but I guess just before you got there.
Yeah,
like ships passing in the night, Terence. We just missed each other.
Yeah, islands in the stream.
So JFR, something new coming out potentially. Any other big thing? Any new packs or anything that could interest consumers for the coming year?
Our 25th anniversary. We're actually our 25th anniversary was last year technically, but we've been taking our time with this project to celebrate that. It'll be out next year. Just 1,000 boxes of 10 cigars in each one. We've been aging these for a while. It's something special. 25 years, a quarter century, and
minimums on that, or can I put a PO in right now for him?
Yeah, unfortunately you're not gonna. There won't be too many per account, but you'll get some for sure. Okay. I'll make sure you get some.
All right. Yeah,
but those ones will be you want to grab them when you can because.
Is that going to be not secluded, but like kind of like Rare Leaf, where it's like
it will be exactly like that.
Okay.
It'll be like both, Rare Leaf and to some degree Supreme, where it'll be allotments, so you can only get so many, like Supreme, and then it'll only be available to our select partners, like Rare.
All right, and you said boxes of 10.
Boxes of 10.
Any blend information you're willing to share?
It's 100% Aganorsa tobacco.
Okay,
no, I'll tell you
that does not narrow it down.
No, not that much. No,
no, but that's really exciting. Listen. I know some people don't, they get tired. I love an anniversary cigar, especially from a company that like doesn't do them too often. Like Padron, obviously Padron is Padron, but like everything from them is some anniversary cigar. But when you see a company like AJ just did it this year, you guys doing it next year, that are like, no, we're actually like, this is special. We're putting a lot of time and effort into celebrating this. I get excited for that kind of thing because I know it's going to be something remarkable. So you got me all jacked up. I'm ready.
It's gonna be the greatest moment of our lives.
Man, see, we're not even into 2025 yet. We're already having two great moments. Will you be unveiling that at the show?
No, actually, that will come out before the show.
Okay,
that'll be out for sure. It was supposed to be out already, but again, we really wanted it to be perfect, so we've been really taking our time with it, and it's not urgent. It's a small quantity, so
I got you.
We want it to be perfect.
Yeah, but I think a lot of companies are going in that direction. Kind of, I think that you're seeing this kind of increase in. I don't want to say yeah, like in these kind of like how these things are being released. I mean, that's been my entire year. This year is like we can't just throw stuff in a catalog anymore and call it whatever. And I'm seeing it now that hopefully they're gonna get me some help next year. But like you kind of do the big launch, and then the next day I'm like, all right, I got to start the next project, and then you see the interest or like the talk of your last one weighing down. I'm like, all right, well I got to go focus back on this again. So you really need to have, like, for me, a launch plan, at least how I'm going to be doing it in 2025, is not like 6 months up and then launch it. It's each one of these projects, the launch plan is a year. 6 months of prep, launch it, 6 months of like, we got to make sure
the cigar you've never heard of is one you don't smoke.
Exactly. So like I need to make sure that it's everywhere, it's appropriately advertised. It's a lot of work. I mean, as you guys,
you're telling me.
I've been doing this kind of stuff. I mean, I've been doing launches, and private label for 3 years now, but like on a very limited basis. This year, they kind of like gave me the reins. And I just said this the other day I was talking to somebody. I think Anto from JM Tobacco. The easiest part about launching a cigar is making the cigar. It's the simplest,
and that's not easy.
But
that's the easiest.
That's number one. It's like, I know the cigar will be what I want, and it'll be ready, and it'll be a great. It's everything, and I just find it interesting that it's like the factories are always reliable to get me the cigar on time, samples. Like all these factories are so good at doing that. It's all these other vendors. It's trying to get bands or trying to get boxes from China or whatever. and then getting everything to come together at one specific moment, it's a lot. But getting the cigar has always been like, all right, cigar's done. That took me a day to get that organized. So no, it is a lot of work, and we're not doing as many releases as like an actual manufacturer does. But the limited view I've had this year, just a total new respect for how you guys do it, and to make sure you're not duplicating what like, oh, we already have something like this, or if we have something that's too similar, do we get rid of the old one? Like rationalizing your portfolio. It's a lot. It's a lot. So I really applaud you and your team for doing it so well.
Finally, somebody, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Oh yeah, like no one's ever patted you on the back before. I know it's high up there. I know it's high up there, Terence.
I pat myself.
I'm sure people get you. Well, no, Terence, thank you so much for joining us today. Always an absolute pleasure. I hope to see you again early in the new year, but definitely trade show
for sure.
I'll be stopping by. Maybe with Chris, I'm going to try to convince them. I got to bribe a couple people, but we should get him there with a camera.
Do what you got to do.
Yeah. No, well, a trade show for him. I mean, like, I went my first year by myself in a GoPro.
I remember.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And Matt Booth gave me a really weird interview, and I had like no direction or whatever.
That's all his interviews.
Yeah. Well, it's good it's going to be like, Chris is going to find it so much easier than when I went, because he knows these people already. They've been coming here. He's been interviewing them.
It's not introducing yourself.
Yeah. And he knows the process. Like when I went there, for a lot of guys, except for like Matt Booth, I had never met anyone before. So I'm like,
he was your first interview?
Yeah. Matt Booth was my first ever interview. I was technically not even incorporated. I was still in the store.
That's a good baptism by fire. He does a good interview.
Oh yeah, I was 23 years old.
It's not boring.
He had his like Super Saiyan hair
back
in the day, and I thought like, oh, I'm gonna dress up like real nice for this. I wore
he's a great guy.
A pink button shirt and a black vest, and I had an earring, and my hair was like short, and I had like no facial hair. And then I remember we did some like bit at the end where we were like knitting sweaters, because like he thought it would be funny.
You could literally tell me anything and I would believe you. I'd go, oh yeah.
The one year he gave out urinal cakes with his face on it.
Yeah.
But no, trade show. Hopefully this year we get back to at least for our experience, a relative normalcy and some exciting new content, and getting to hang out with some tremendous people like yourself. So
that's feelings mutual.
And I think that the day we interview at the trade show, probably the greatest day of our lives.
No, there's no probably about it.
Terence, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure. Guys, make sure to check out the Arsenio, now available at JR, and of course the Bone Shaker Lunatic, exclusive to JR and our channels. Make sure to check out all our other great videos and content. Make sure to comment, like, subscribe, and as always, keep it lit.
Keep it flex.
And flex. That's right. You got to flex.